Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon your time zone. Welcome to this month's webinar. We're going to be talking about demystifying knowledge graphs and get into some applications and discovery and compliance, but especially data management. By the way, Juan, we actually just released the last podcast we did. We recorded that a while ago, so that's actually coming out this week too. So for those of you on this, you can get like a 2-for-1. You can get one here and then one on our podcast, which was actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that one. But today, Juan, it's great to have you back. I'm Seth Early, founder, CEO of Early Information Science, wrote a book called The AI-Powered Enterprise. We have a podcast as well. Juan, why don't you go ahead and give a quick thumbnail and background and talk about what you do and your podcast as well.
Well, thanks, Seth, for having me here today. I'm really excited about our conversation. So my name is Juan Cicada. I'm the principal scientist at the Data.World. Data.World, we're an enterprise data catalog. My background is in all things semantics and knowledge graphs. I started in the space kind of over 15 years ago, where I did my undergrad, my PhD in computer science at the University of Texas at Austin, doing a lot of the research about integrating relational databases with semantics ontologies and semantic web, and now everything we call knowledge graphs. So this has been my bread and butter, kind of where I've dedicated my career. I've done research, did startups, spun out technology, commercialized it, sold it to Data.World. That's why I'm here for the last couple of years. I also have a book called Designing and Building Enterprise Knowledge Graphs. Also, like Seth, I have a podcast called Catalog and Cocktail. It's an honest, no BS, non-salesy data podcast that's been going around for like 2.5 years now. Everything we'll be talking here is a lot of the stuff that is just part of my soul and my passion when I do, and things I've been learning because I get the chance to go talk to so many phenomenal guests. So really excited about our conversation.
Yeah, and it's near and dear to my heart as well. This has been my world for the last 20 plus years. And it's funny when you start hearing all the stuff around machine learning and AI and chat GPT and all of these large language models. And people used to say to me, "Oh, your business is going to go away. It's not going to be needed," right? And there's nothing that could be further from the truth, right? We need to have, in order to take advantage of any of these emerging technologies, we need to have the foundation, and that is the data and the data governance. A little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We're recording today, so you can share this with your colleagues. You'll be able to put the slides as well. We're going to shoot for under an hour so that we can have time for questions, and really would love to get your input on the poll. So when we have a poll, please participate. And also there's a Q&A tab. You can ask your questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and go through our agenda. So one of the things I want to do is talk about knowledge graphs in terms of what they are and what they aren't. And a lot of times people get confused when they talk about things like taxonomies. I've heard people say, well, a taxonomy is different than the ontology. Well, it's kind of not a different thing. It's a component. Ontologies are comprised of taxonomies, and you sometimes hear people thinking of them as very different things. So I want to show you the connection between taxonomy and ontology, and then an ontology and a knowledge graph, right? So we'll talk about navigation versus classification and how classification can give us those relationships between those data points. We'll talk broadly about knowledge graph applications, in terms of knowledge discovery, in terms of compliance, but we really want to focus on data governance, because data governance is at the foundation of all of this stuff. When people say that their data isn't good, they don't have the right data, they need more training for their algorithm, right? The AI isn't working because we need more training data. The data is more important than the algorithm, right? And that's what we have to understand. And that's where, we're not going to be able to take shortcuts and have magic bullets and machine learning magic pixie dust to sprinkle on our data and make it right? We really need to be intentional about how we manage this, who has responsibility, what they can do with it, what's available, and so on. And of course, everybody wants to be data-driven. Everybody wants to be able to make decisions based on data and metrics. We'll talk about how they can really be done and what the obstacles are to that. But it's really a nice framework to do this. I'm going to talk a little bit about regulatory compliance. I have kind of a story that I want to tell you about, but representing the whole regulatory compliance landscape, both from internal ecosystem, information ecosystems to the larger financial services environment, to regulatory environments, and how all those things fit together with a graph capability. And of course, we want to give you something practical to get started. We really want to talk to you and help you through this. I think Juan and I are both very much into really educating people, helping them solve problems, right? And that's, we can do that by engaging in dialogue. This is a little bit about early information science. I've been around for over 20 years. We have about 50 consultants, and we have slides and logos. This is just a sampling, but we've cut across lots of industries, and it's all the mother and apple buy. Sell more stuff, reduce your costs, make things more efficient, right? But getting into the nuances of how that's done is really where we differentiate. And Juan, why don't I let you give your pitch, your minute pitch on data.org. 132 million in financing. You got to be doing something right for that, man. The smart money doesn't go there for no reason.
The data world, so we're the enterprise data catalog for the modern data stack. So Goldman Sachs, for example, is one of our investors. We're a cloud native SaaS platform, which we leverage the power of our knowledge graph to make data discovery, governance, and analysis easy. We have, like I said, over 90 customers in many different domains, a very strong patent portfolio. Everything inside data world is a graph, and that's what gives us a very power to be able to go integrate and catalog any types of data. We're a very proud B corporation, so we're a public benefit corporation, so we have a big commitment also to have an open data catalog. We actually have one of the largest open data catalogs with almost like 2 million users and have the data sets.
And that's really
interested in more, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Juan. I was going to say that's great that you're a B corporation because you're looking at, what an enterprise should be contributing. It's not just about, raping and pillaging.
No, I say one of our missions is to be an archive for the world's data and be able to help people organize your world's data. For that, we want to start within your enterprise.
Nice. That's great. So we're going to start off with a poll, and Carolyn, why don't you go ahead and go ahead and push that poll out, if you would. So where are you? Are you at the beginning of your knowledge graph journey? Where are you? Are you in the initial investigation? Maybe doing small scale pilots. Maybe you've operationalized at a functional level. Perhaps you have enterprise-wide deployment. Seeing a lot of, this is the popcorn popping, right? We want to make sure we're hearing stuff. Wow, you guys are really participating. I see a lot of folks chiming in here. That's awesome. Many of you initial investigation, which is great. The fact that you aren't in the initial investigation means you can do this right. You can set it up correctly. And one of the things that Juan and I are very passionate about is the business case, right? Making sure you can measure stuff. If you can't measure it and can't build a business case, then you really need to not be involved. You should not be making investments in these initiatives if you can't justify them. All right, so let's keep going here. So it looks like most people are in that stage. Initial investigation, there's a few small pilots, but there's a significant number of you. And then it doesn't look like anybody is in really that enterprise deployment. There's a couple of you who said none of the above. You could actually put that in your comment section or your question section, just to hear maybe you're a consultant, maybe it doesn't apply, or maybe there's something else. But, this is what we typically expect. A lot of folks, this is still new technology, it's emerging technology. It's been around for a while, but it's been around more in an abstract academic way. Now we're really getting to the point where we can show people the value and show how this should be working. Okay, let me continue on. So here's an interesting statistic. By 2025, graph technology is used by 80% of data and analytics innovations. Finding relationships in combination of diverse data using graph techniques will form the foundation of modern data and analytics. Do you want to say more to this, Juan, I know we have one more slide about that. Do you want me to move forward, or do you want to?
Yeah, actually, if you could share the next slide. So
Yep.
last year I was at the Gartner conference, and what I was very fascinated to see Edisham have this on the slide as recommendations is to invest in an augmented data catalog to inventory all types of metadata assets along with their associated relationships and a flexible data model on a graph. I like to say managing your metadata, this is a graph problem. This is about understanding all types of data that you have. And why a graph? Very simple, because you can take all types of data, you can very easily represent it as a graph, as the node, edge node. And it's all about relationships. It's all about networks. And you want to understand and how things are connected and how things you can navigate all those connections. That's why we say that your data catalog must be powered by a knowledge graph, is what we will be talking a little bit more about.
Great, great. And again, what we're seeing is that there's so much utility to this. There's so much value to this. It's such a great starting point. It's a jumping off point and a foundation for everything, right? For first party data, for personalization, product information, content, for knowledge architecture. All of these things are dependent upon this. And, it's really very innovative. The way that data.world does it, and I'm not to pitch the particular tool, but they're very innovative, right? In terms of how they democratize the data. So I think you get a lot of people talking about the same functionality, like over the years, metadata management was a huge one, right? People talk about metadata management, and there's you could look at 10 different applications that look completely different. What's interesting about this approach is it really helps to democratize, it's understandable, but we'll get into that a little bit more. And you can kind of see where this is growing. This is the fastest growing segment. So even if this is not on your radar yet, you really need to start thinking about this application and the utility. Now, one of the things that I want to do is, again, part of this is demystifying knowledge graphs. So how do we get to knowledge graphs, right? And I want to talk about navigation versus classification. A lot of times you see on the left, that's just a screenshot from 3M's public site, and it has a hierarchy, it has a product hierarchy. People think of this as navigation, and the point here is it is a navigational structure. It is a taxonomy. It does have parent-child relationships in many cases, but it doesn't always, right? This is the core structure and organizing principle for a number of collection of information. But many times, when we do this without a view of the classification approaches, when it's just static navigational nodes, it's very limited. And this is a very dated approach for anything but the most rudimentary sites. We really need to build our navigational experience based on classification. What do I mean by that, right? It's driven dynamically. It's driven by the isness and aboutness. When we talk about navigational hierarchies, right? Sometimes people call these business hierarchies, and the reason why is because they don't necessarily abide by good classification rules, right? They're really about, a business construct, but you can build the right business experience using classification structures, right? If you talk about, when you look many times at a navigational hierarchy, they're not always clear relationships between the parent category and the child category. And many times you'll get mixtures of brands and product types and things like that. What we're saying is if we can sort out the core structures first, right? In other words, have all of those different categories of, if this is a piece of content, what are the different categories of that content? If this is a product, what are the different categories of product? If this is a contractor, what are the different types of contracts? And what we're doing is we're defining the isness, right? We're defining the isness in classification. And then we're defining the aboutness. What is it about this piece of information? If it's a contract, well, how do I tell 1,000 contracts apart, right? That's the aboutness. But they all come from these taxonomies. In other words, we're not just putting up a navigational node, we're generating it dynamically based on the classification structures in our data. And again, what's happening is, it's the isness and aboutness. What is this thing? It's a sweater. well, how do I tell these sweaters apart? Well, they're large, small, medium, there's different brands, there's colors and so on. But the classification is what we're getting at. We don't want to think about navigation unless it is driven dynamically through classification. And that's where we get faceted search. That's where we get all different types of retrieval mechanisms and so on. Now, what's really super powerful about this is the relationships between those classifications. So if I say, here are products and here are processes, well, wait a minute, here are the products that support those processes. Or if I have an industries category, and I say for these industries, these are the processes that are really important, fabrication for a manufacturer. And then we can start to say, for that industry, let's present the right products based on the right processes, right? So you start to get these relationships that actually capture knowledge about your customers, knowledge about your processes, knowledge about your products, your solutions. What is the right solution for this problem? What is the right product for that solution? What is the right information to do installation for that product? What are the troubleshooting guides? Again, this all becomes that knowledge network and that scaffolding, that knowledge scaffolding for the organization. So the classification structures define the ontologies. The ontologies are basically a collection of all the taxonomies in the organization that describe every dimension of your information, of your people, of your customers, of your products, of your processes, your problems, of your solutions, of your markets, and then the relationships between them. So we can start to capture the knowledge of our domain. The taxonomy becomes the classification taxonomies become the ontologies when we have the relationships between them. And then when we connect that to data, now we have the knowledge graph. And the knowledge graph is the scaffolding of the knowledge in the enterprise. It is where we hang all of our knowledge and information. So when you start building it this way, you can say, well, I need to start with taxonomies. I need to start with my isness and aboutness. And one of the challenges you also get is when you buy these things as pre-built models, sometimes they'll call them language models or knowledge models or, ontologies, they become too big, right? You need to really curate it to your processes, your customers, your products, your solutions. Otherwise, you end up with a drop-down list of 1,000 terms, right? We're doing this with a life sciences company, giant ontology around diseases. Well, guess what? We can't have that in the user experience, right? So there's ways of dealing with this, but you really need to think about it as how to adapt and customize it to your processes, your products, your solutions, your customers, your markets, your knowledge, and so on. So that's how we connect those things together. When we start looking at how they're applied, there's a couple of big classifications, and I'll let Juan take this first piece. Go ahead, Juan.
Yeah, I actually wanted to kind of follow up on what you're going through in your from taxonomies to ontologies to knowledge graph. The takeaway I want everybody to have here is that this isn't scary because you are already doing it. You are already doing this work.
Yes.
You're already doing this work probably implicitly. Sometimes you actually do it explicitly. And what the takeaway here is make this very explicit and start connecting it all together. Right. My definition for the knowledge graph is you're representing the collection of your real world concepts in nodes and the relationships between them as edges, right? That's the graph part. Mm-hmm. And you're using that to go link and integrate data that's coming from very diverse sets of sources, right? So the knowledge part is the concepts and the relationships we're turning that into like first-class citizens, and that's what's encoding the knowledge. And the graph part is like, that's the data. That's the structure of how we're connecting all this data together. At the end of the day, our goal here is we want to be able to provide accessible, understandable data. And that's combining the bits, the raw data, plus it's meeting the semantics. Mm-hmm. And everything that what Seth was discussing, like all these classification hierarchies, taxonomies, and ontologies, all you're doing right there is making that meaning explicit. And this work is already happening within your organization. So don't be afraid of it. You are already doing this work, and we just need to elevate that and make it a first-class citizen. So that's kind of touch on.
Well, that's a great point. And I think, what we're trying to do is we're trying to add context to data. And when you do that, then you have an understanding of, the data that you have, what that business context is, how you're providing access, who's going to own it, what are the curation processes, right? Understanding those upstream and downstream dependencies, understanding any kind of bottlenecks, and understanding, who is connected to the data and what processes are connected to data.
Yeah.
Let you
So
on that for
another important takeaway I want the audience to have here is that your first knowledge graph should be of your metadata. And this is a mistake I've done in my career, and I've realized that now while I did at World, is that we like to jump to make sure that we want to jump to make the knowledge graph of customer 360, of order 360. That is a big jump. And I think the first step is to understand the landscape of where we are today. So if we think about knowledge graph applications as an X360, that first thing should be about your metadata resources. What are the data that I have today? What are the tables? What are the columns? What are the dashboards? Who are the people? Who are the stewards? What is relationship? Who is responsible? Who has the stewardship? And at the end of the day, you realize everything is a really complex map. This graph, and that's why it's a graph, and that's why you want to say, hey, here are bottlenecks in my graph. This is, for example, a very important database, important table that is being used by so many different things. Did you know that? Who's responsible for that? Right? You want to understand lineage is one of the common features in data catalog. Lineage is traversing the graph. So your data catalog, manage your metadata. That is your first knowledge graph application. And again, metadata is a graph problem. So that's why you should have a data catalog and manage this in the form of a graph. And then from there, you start expanding and getting into knowledge management. I'll throw it to Seth.
Yeah. And again, it's that visibility and that understanding. We talk about chains of trust. We had one organization that was a financial services company that they just had to keep going back upstream when they're producing a report to make sure the data was accurate. They should not have to do that, right? They should be able to have that chain of trust and know that the data has been curated and vetted and cleansed and so on, and that they have rights to it. But every time they went and started to try to validate what they were doing or produce a report, they spent all this unnecessary time doing stuff that already had been done, but they just didn't have visibility to it. So part of this is making all of that stuff explicit. And of course, the knowledge management and the retrieval is really about, using these connections across these different structured and unstructured systems to be able to locate all of the information that you need in the right context about a topic, a customer, a process, a product, right? The X360, right? Is it a customer 360? Is it an employee 360? Is it a product 360, right? What are the things that we need to understand? And then how do I access exactly the right information that I need in the context of my problem? And that is a very difficult problem to solve at scale. But the only way to do that is using knowledge graphs, is using those identifiers and those signals from the employee or from the customer that will tell you how they are, tell you about their mental model. It'll tell you how they're using the content, and it will allow you to surface that content the next time somebody with similar needs and similar contexts comes across that same problem. It's managing ownership, it's managing life cycles, it's managing, knowledge and making sure it's up to date. It's really getting relevant answers. What's relevancy? Relevancy depends on context. Context depends on your metadata, your interests, your role, your position, your industry, right? That's a relevant. Relevance is in the eye of the beholder, but we can describe that beholder in metadata, and we can describe them in our knowledge graph. And of course, trying to get the right people of expertise. Many times you read a document, well, you don't really want that document. You want the person, right? So it's connecting that to expertise, to people. So again, that's where this enterprise knowledge scaffolding, which gives you this view of the unstructured and the structured data, will help you in all of these areas, right? And this is what's critically important. There's no information overload, there's filter failure, right? It's like there's always too much information. There always has been too much information. And the question is, how do you filter it and how do you get to what you need? And all of these signals around who you are, your process, and the context of that data and the purpose of that data, all of those things are brought together leveraging a knowledge graph so that you can contextualize and retrieve information appropriately. Here's what I love. I love when we talk about, problems and application proliferation, right? Everybody's like, what's the answer to application proliferation? We have too many places to look for stuff. Another application, right? And it's like, no, if we just had one place to go, if we migrate to a central location, we need to go to a central database where all of our people can find their stuff. Well, guess what? That is impossible, okay? Because it's an ecosystem of information that's constantly changing. There's always going to be different applications. There's always going to be different people touching it. The data is changing. What we need is a semantic layer, a scaffolding, a structure on which to hang our knowledge and our data and our content. And that is what the knowledge graph is. I'm going through this right now with one organization, and there's a user experience company designing wireframes and designing all this. And part of what they're saying is, we're going to have one place to go for all of information, and it's going to be completely contextualized and give people exactly what they want, when they want it. And I'm like, dude, please stop saying that. It's not that easy a problem to solve, and it's not going to magically be solved by these wireframes. We really need to look at how that data is being structured and managed and curated, and we need to understand the use cases and the metadata model around the user, because it is not about a wireframe in an application. It is really about how you enter your data landscape, how you enter your data ecosystem, and then how you traverse it and how you navigate it to get the answers that you want, right? So, and this is an architecture that we think about, right? The idea of you have different types of information, product information and marketing and historical and, transactional stuff. You have different platforms, and you have this experience that you're trying to create externally for customers, and you're trying to facilitate that with internal customer experience. And my whole point here is that, in order to contextualize that experience, you need to have this consistent architecture. You can't have acts of heroics upstream and expected seamless customer experience externally. And so whenever you're onboarding new products, new platforms, whenever you're bringing in new applications, whenever you're doing your DevOps, you have to start looking at the ontologies so that you can use the same consistent metadata for structured and unstructured information. You can have the right content models, right? You have the ability to provide that consistent architecture as the organization evolves. Do you want to add color commentary to that one?
Yeah, I think what happens here is from a knowledge graph perspective is what enables us to manage all this in this decentralized world that we're in. So we need to find a balance of what needs to be centralized, what needs to be decentralized. And I think that's the theme here. Then there's no silver bullet. And I think that's when we get into governance, we're going to talk about the whole ivory tower that we've kind of come from. Find that balance.
That's right. So let's ask people now, well, where are you in your data governance? A lot of organizations say they need to do this, but then when you start, so Carol, if you could just push that survey out, that poll out, what a lot of times what we're getting organizations saying, oh yeah, data governance is really important. But then when it comes to a meeting and that they're being invited to, it's like, oh, data governance, meeting declined. How's never work for you? Never works for me. I have never open. Will never work for you because that's what I want to attend this meeting. Never. So first of all, you got to make the punishment fit the crime, but you got to make sure that people have a reason to be there, right? When I say make the punishment fit the crime, it can't be so bulky and heavyweight that you can't make decisions. And at the same time, you don't want to invite people if they don't have a reason to be there, right? And that's the biggest way, easiest way to turn people off to stuff like that. So a lot of folks are immature, be interested in the industries that you're in. Some data governance, but maybe not connected to business value, right? That's the really important piece. Defined with value, but maybe there's less buy-in, right? Because we're not communicating the values effectively. And then, of course, it would be great if your business was partnering with IT, seeing the value and being compliant, right? But it looks like we're pretty varied. And again, I would be interested in some of the comments if you're not actually doing this, or if it doesn't apply, just letting us know what your situation is. I had a couple of comments here. Data governance, much hand waving, little forward progress. Okay, yeah, that's a big piece of it. All right, so we have most people have some data governance, but it's really just not connected to business value. And I'll tell you that is the biggest failure point, right? Because if people can't find that value. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that, and let's go back and Juan, why don't I? Whoops.
Yeah.
Why don't you walk through some of
this is what we've been observing right now in the market is, look, we need to be more data driven. We need to democratize data. Like this is kind of the obvious thing right now, but guess what? It's harder. It actually, you would think that by now it should be easier. Like we have all this technology, we've invested so much in lakes and warehouses, all this stuff. Why is it getting harder, right? There's just so much faster change where there's so much competition. We continue to constantly hear, right? Productivity loss. 80% of the time are spent kind of looking for data, not doing their analytics. Compliance needs are going to continue to increase, not decrease. You're going to have more and more regulations coming around here, right? There's this cultural check right now that actually 24% of the executives say that their companies aren't data driven, and it's gone down, right? It's gone down. Like this is not increasing. It's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. We hear constantly that the average tenure of a chief data officer is 2 to 3 years, right? People are not getting the buy-ins and they're jumping around from places. We organized a research study and we identified that 97% of data engineers are frustrated. Actually, go check your data engineers teams. Like they're the folks who are there running, making sure all the data is up and running, and they're frustrated. They may be leaving your organization right now. This is a big issue.
70% looking to leave the organization in the next holy guacamole. I mean, seriously.
What happens when all these people leave? Like who do you know is responsible for
unbelievable? That should get people's attention. That should get people's attention right there. Go ahead, keep going, Juan. You're on the
bottom line. It's harder right now. Something needs to change, and it's not just about technology. So if you go to the next slide, I really like this image here of
yeah, I love this.
We are literally stuck in a rut right now, and I think we keep doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results, right? That's Einstein's definition of insanity. And the way I like to think about governance is almost like there's the analogy is like brakes in a car. What do you have brakes in a car? Usually people say, so you can slow down. It's like, that has been the traditional approach, right? You slow down. Hey, hold on, or we can't do that. We'll go protect you. But you also can see you have brakes in the car so you can drive fast safely. I want to empower users to safely use the data. So we are right now stuck, right? This is the governance that we constantly hear today. If you go to the next slide, it's this very traditional model. The traditional model goes top down, right? You start creating the big committee, and they're the ones who are going to define what can be done and find all the rules and all the policies. And these get pushed down all the way down to consumers. And at the end, if you do one more click here, it's like you have to go ask for permission, right? To go access the data. And
I'd like some more.
No, I would like some more data, please. Can I please?
Yeah.
You know what? People are
no.
And that's why they go off around all these things. And as you just said, Steph, oh, you got a governance meeting, decline. I'm not going to go do that. Those are the naysayers. I'm not going to go. I don't want them here because they're going to tell us we can't do these stuff. Like, so I'm not saying that I'm not saying that we have to ignore them. No, we just need to kind of really change this mindset. It's again, are you focusing, you're looking at your brakes in the car just so it can slow you down?
Right.
That balance of like, no, it helps me drive fast safely.
Yeah, and to get out of defensiveness and think, what can this really do for us and how can we accelerate innovation? One of the questions or comments that we had a couple of come up, and one of them was data governance is always important, but never urgent. Any ideas on how to make it more urgent? And I think at the end of the day, it's connecting to that business value, which we're going to talk about shortly.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, let's be very honest. We live in a capitalist world. There are two goals: make money and save money. You need to make sure that you are tying your project and how you're making money and how you're saving money. Are you You need to be able to say, here, we are leaving money on the table because we are not taking advantage of this data that we have. We need to have the safe usage of it. Saving money, we want to reduce risk, exposures and things. So I think these are the two kind of, we got to tie these things to your make money, save money, and tie this to the strategic objectives of your organization. Now, if you go to the next slide, kind of the image here is that we've lived in this ivory tower expecting we will create this beautiful rules and policies that everybody will go and adhere to. You're centralizing everything. We need to stop doing this. This is not working. We're stuck, right? We're driving ourselves insane. What we need to start doing, you go to the next slide, is we need to start working together. It's not just about having the small group of people defining all these policies. We need to really understand what is every single type of business you're trying to accomplish, and what do they need for those types of goals, right? Do they need to have all these kind of top-down compliance, or can they actually do something small and then keep expanding? So the message here is that governance and just general data management is not just a technical problem. We have been looking at this as a technical problem, and it's really a social technical phenomenon that we're dealing with. It is time for us to go work together. So my question to everybody in the audience is that if you are in your tech IT world, when was the last time you were speaking with the business side? Do you understand what their problems are, what they're trying to go do? If they're asking you for data, why are they asking for that data? What is the true problem they're trying to solve? Don't just deliver them the data. Be consultative. Try to understand the business to make sure you understand, so you can actually be more strategic around that.
So there's a couple of questions that I wanted to just stop for a second and take a look at. One question was, can the systems that produce the data in the data catalog be documented in knowledge graphs? And I think that's the whole idea, right? Is
Give me a second. We'll get to that point. I'll answer that question directly. But so if we continue to the next slide, I want to say, we always talk about people, process, and technology, right? We focus so much on technology. There is a people, the process we need to go do. I want to talk about process in a second, but the other one is measurement, right? What are you measuring? How do you know you're being successful? Are you defining what is being adopted? Is your goal is for data to be used? Are you measuring the usage of your data and so forth? So in the next slide, the way I like to see this and what data.world is that we're your front office for your data analytics. We want your producers and your consumers to really work together. And I think this is something that we've seen, this gap in the industry, is that they're just kind of two worlds apart. And all that work that happens is like that life cycle of your data analytics. That should happen inside of a data catalog like data.world. It's the same way that you think about it, is like, why do sales teams use Salesforce? If you can click again, Seth. Why do software engineering teams use Jira? It's because their approaches of how they're doing things before that, it just wouldn't scale. People wouldn't trust them. They need to be able to have a way of generating that trust so they can all start working together. That's how we need to start thinking about data analytics and why you want to have a data catalog and putting your producers and consumers to work together. If you can go to click a couple more times. So, and then the next slide. So what we really need is this trust at scale. And if you go to the next slide, and we all are very obsessed of starting with the data, right? And I think one of the things I like to say is, I don't like the word data catalog. It should be much more than data cataloging data, because you need to be catalog data and the knowledge. So we focus so much on understanding just the data, but when you zoom out, there's all these things around the data that it is the context about it, and it's all connected about it. If you you do a couple more clicks here. Sure. All these is related, and when you start seeing that, it's connections. That's why it's a graph. I'm going to create those maps. What you're seeing here in red are the questions that a lot of people are spending time trying to go answer. We should not be wasting our time answering these questions. I'm not saying that they're important questions. Of course they are. These questions should already have automatically answers. We should already know the answers to these things. If I have questions about who I need to go talk to, you should immediately go to your data catalog and get that answer immediately. If something broke, you should know why it broke immediately. This shouldn't be a large request and task. So we're spending so much time asking and answering questions that should already be obviously answered. However, there are questions that we do need to be able to go spend our time, because that's where we're going to find the opportunities of increasing revenue, reducing cost. How do I get employees onboarded? How much time do we get wasted? Time gets wasted when employees get onboarded. Where are things complex in our data infrastructure that we can be reduce it, because that complexity generates a lot of risk? What are the current risks that I have right now? How do we make more money? How do we save more money? Those are the questions that you need to be asking. You should not be spending your time asking questions on the red side. If that's what you're doing, you should figure out, I need to be able to focus on those most very important questions. So the way we see this, if you go to the next slide, is that the knowledge graphs are that map. RDF and Sparkle are the equivalent of the TCP and IP of the internet and the web, of your data interoperability. So this is the message that I want you to all have.
And you want to just define for people who may not be familiar with how that analogy works. TCP/IP, of course, is the protocol for accessing information. RDF and Sparkle,
RDF and Sparkle is the same protocols, right? To be able to exchange data and knowledge.
Yeah,
right?
And to exchange.
Exactly. So RDF is the graph model, which is on the web, having unique identifiers, and Sparkle is a query language to be able to go query and access all types of data around this. So you want to be able to have open standards to be able to go integrate this data as a graph. And it's not just about the data. Remember, it's about integrating also the knowledge around it, because that's the context that we have.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about processes here. And I think if we go to the next slide, one of the we kind of traditionally is this top-down approach. And what we have been championing here at data.world, and we've coined this whole term about we need to be agile with our data governance, agile data governance. And this starts out by, who's your team? We need to understand who are the people involved in your data in data governance and organizations. There are the producers and there are the consumers. So identify who are the people, who's that team, and they're the producer and they're the consumers. And here just kind of a set of kind of titles and stuff that we're showing. Now, and the next step is, click the next slide. Let's identify what are the stories, what are the business value, the drivers. And let's go create a backlog. And what I mean by this is literally, you do one more click. Let's start making a list of all the questions that people are trying to go answer and why and how it's associated to that. Again, Seth, you can click one more. We want to be able to catalog that backlog of questions. What are the metrics? What's what keeps people up at night? Again, remember, your data catalog should be cataloged not just more data, but also all these questions around that. You want to be able to tie all these things together. What are the use cases people are doing? If you continue here, once you identify, you want to be able to start creating your data assets or your data products, however you're thinking about it. And we're going through this cycle that we do, which is very similar to software engineering. You want to be able to collaborate. You want to release early. You want to understand who your consumers are. Remember, what are they expecting to go do? Let's go release things. Let's go have peer review process. Make sure things are well documented. If we are understanding the requirements, did we actually deliver the data that the consumer wanted? Let's go check that out. And we need to be able to capture all this work. And all that work should also be captured within your data catalog. And then from there, once we start releasing, curating these data sets, people can go use it. We need to start enabling the consumers. If you click the next one. And that means that we need to start training people to go use the data. We need to create communities around the data usage to make sure that people I know who to go talk to. Again, this is a people and process aspect over here. And then the kind of close to the final step, one more click here. This is one of the important aspects that I think we forget a lot, is that we need to learn and iterate. While people are starting to go work with the data and generating their insights and answering their questions, the producers of that data need to be measuring, need to be learning, need to be helping people, need to say, yes, we delivered this data, but we thought that we'd address your requirements, but we're seeing that people are not using it. What's going on? Did we get this right? Or did we get this wrong? Is there lack of training to go do this? Let's iterate all the time and learn so we can become better ourselves about the data and learn about the system. And finally, one more slide here. We iterate. We identify new questions. We shuffle the priority of the questions. This entire process that we talk about here, you need to have a data catalog that will support you with this process. This is your agile approach. And all these questions, all these people, all these learnings, they need to be part of that data catalog, and they need to be connected to all the data. And again, we're talking about connections and networks. That's why you need to have a data catalog that is powered by a knowledge graph that will enable you to save any type of data and any types of questions, any types of assets, resources, and connect everything together.
That's
Let me
great.
throw it back to you, Seth.
Great. Yeah, and I just want to pause for a couple of questions. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But let me just take a look. So there's a couple of interesting ones here. One is from somebody who's in digital asset management, Anela. I'm a digital asset management practitioner. I can understand the DAM system integrating with other applications. How does the knowledge management and data graphing get into the stream? Integrating metadata? I still have to wrap my head around this. So again, think of it as the asset is another artifact, another object, and the isness and aboutness of that asset comes from your knowledge graph. So even if you're taking your digital assets and you're saying, here's where I'm going to be accessing these assets, this is the metadata structure. That metadata structure should come from your ontology and your knowledge graph, right? So the idea is it's another object, it's another artifact, and maybe there's a repository someplace, but all of that metadata structure should be part of the knowledge graph, because those same structures will be used for other things, right? You're going to classify an image in one way. Maybe there's a product associated with an image. Well, that product category is associated with products, right? Or other documents or other unstructured information. So you want to think about what are the organizing principles that apply to that digital asset, and then that metadata belongs in the data catalog. Juan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to say that at the end, you just have so many different sources within the organization. You want to keep track of what sources are out there, right? Just because of, there's always this growing landscape. Who's responsible for things? There's whatever is in that system can have context for other things. Like, this is what we want to go manage. At the end of the day, I like to kind of think about this almost like the personal financing pyramid. You want to have a foundation to understand what you have. Just like I know what my income is. I know what my expenses are. I know what I have a budget. I know where I have debt that I'm paying off. I may have an emergency fund. Like, I just want to have a strong foundation of what I have today. And then you build on that. They're like, oh, I need to be able to go do some of the governance, which is I need to be able to do some defensive. I want to make sure that if bad things happen, I'm protected. You have insurance. But I also want to make sure that good things do happen. Am I maximizing my 401k? Am I doing things like that? Am I making, and then from there, you want to keep increasing, saying, oh, I want to just generate more wealth. I want to be able to go generate the best data products out there that can probably even monetize and so forth. I want to build that strong foundation. And the other thing is to deal with the known use cases of today, but also with the unknown use cases of tomorrow. And the knowledge graph, given the graph such a flexible kind of architecture, enables us to be very agile and deal with the known and also the unknowns of tomorrow.
Right. And so, back to your point about, the assets and the use cases, well, there may be rights issues that you need to worry about, right? If you're using a piece of artwork. So, again, all of those things, it's data like any other piece of data.
That is just more knowledge that needs to be cataloged and understood. And I think this is a great segue for that next slide, which is, I think, one of my favorite slides that you have, Seth.
Oh, okay. I'll jump into that now. I want to see if there's anything else, but we'll come back to some of these questions in a minute. So this is the slide that we're saying, when it comes to business value, this is the most important thing you can be considering, right? Because people are going to say, how is this going to increase revenue? And you are working down in the weeds, right? You're trying to say, how is my taxonomy working? How's search working? How's my data? What's going on with my fill rates? What's going on? So I can have data scorecards, right? And I can measure that, but that's not going to increase revenue. What it's going to do is it's going to enable a process, right? And so that data, without that data, we can't support a process. The process isn't going to work, right? We're not going to get conversions. We're not going to get people enough site traffic. We're not going to get the things that we need if we don't have the data. So the data supports a process. And this is where you have to identify the process that is relevant to the data that you are trying to curate and manage. This is how you're going to do it. And the process leads to or enables an objective. This is a business objective. This is a metric that is, I like to say, Chris Penn, my colleague, I always give him attribution. He said, this is where you either get bonused or you catalyze a resume generating event, right? When executives do not meet their objectives, that's when they move on. And so having that outcome, that's what's important to people. That's the thing you want to focus on. What are we trying to accomplish? And then what are the processes that are supporting that? And then what is the data? And we need to have that linkage because, again, the objectives are going to align with the strategy. We have to have linkage up and down the food chain. We may think that this stuff is obvious, and it could very well be obvious to you. It is not obvious to other people. They don't understand it. They don't see that. We have to make it explicit. And sometimes it's causation, sometimes it's correlation, which is fine. But again, we need to start establishing those patterns. And there's a bunch of ways. Somebody had mentioned that when product information is not managed and not governed, that's where clients get into huge problems. Absolutely, totally agree. And I can give you a whole range of metrics around product data. Each one of these has metrics. You want to comment more on this? No, go to the next slide. Sure.
One of the reasons why I really like this slide is because we see kind of the whole phases of kind of when people are down in the weeds, let's call it, and all the way down to the executive strategy of the questions that people, how do I make money? How do I save money? What I see a lot is that the IT world, the data folks are spent so much at the bottom layer, and they're thinking about their technology they're buying to address the technical issues at the bottom layer. You look at a data catalog just as a catalog for data, and you're thinking about lineage just from technical lineage, you're only focusing on that bottom layer. But you really, when you start going up, you start realizing, oh, I'm understanding what are the processes, what are the outcomes, right? What are the use cases? That is where the knowledge of the business is. So you want to be able to have a catalog that is cataloging not just the data, which is obviously, right, but is also helping you manage and catalog all the knowledge across your business. Think about when we talk about lineage, right? Understanding where the flow of data is. What about we think about business lineage? Let me understand the flow of the business. Right. There's a decision that happened, right? There's a business process. What goes into that business process? Data goes into it. There are decisions. There's people. You want to be able to keep track of this. And just kind of, we're running close on time. I do want to add something because I've seen a couple of questions about the business value.
Yes.
It is important to tie directly to the business value. And I'm going to share an example. One of my favorite examples, one of our customers is Prologis, one of the world's largest kind of logistics real estate companies, right? If you buy anything on Amazon, 80% chance it goes through a Prologis warehouse. They executive objective is we need to improve the quality of our data. Now, how did they get to that? Is because they identified a series of opportunities and saying we're leaving money on the table because of bad data quality. An example here is that they said, what is the height of a warehouse? What happens if I have the wrong height of a warehouse? If I say it's 40 feet, but it's actually 50 feet, I could have stored more boxes. I could have sold more. But if I thought it was 50 feet, but it's actually 40 feet, right? I thought I was going to bring more stuff, but I don't have the space for it. The boxes are outside. It's raining. I'm losing money right there. So they identified problems at the business level, saying, "Oh, we're losing money paying insurance for stuff. We're leaving money on the table," and they really figured out that they had an issue with the data quality. That's a way how they connect all this stuff. Now, what is fascinating is that this isn't just a technical issue that it's a cultural. What they did was that they executive mandate said, you know what? How are we going to incentivize people to do this correctly? We're going to tell them that 20% of their bonus depends on the quality metrics that we're defining. Money in your pocket. You are boots on the ground with the 20% of your money going in your pocket depends on this. This is a way how they incentivize and create a culture around it. And it's not just technology, it's this people and process and culture around it. And having people who can navigate that entire kind of what I call an elevator from digital, or the data all the way to enterprise strategy. That's how you generate business value.
Absolutely. And taking that point a little further, we can cut across the entire customer journey, right? We can take that, we can look at this according to each stage of the customer life cycle, and we can say, okay, for each stage, there's a department that has some responsibility. There are processes within that department. There are accountabilities, and there's, of course, the data and the technologies. And we can take that layer cake scorecard that we just showed and turn it upside down. There's our data and technology scores. There's our process scorecards. There's our outcome scorecards. And this allows you to do this across the entire life cycle. Now, this is not trivial. This is not easy, but a data catalog is going to be your first step in being able to realize this and to enable it. So it really has this whole, this holistic view, and this is how you become data driven. I know we only have a couple of minutes left. I know there were a couple of other questions. Let me blast through this section on compliance, and then if we have another minute, we'll keep answering questions. And we can also take that offline. But again, regulatory compliance, the point here is that large numbers of rules, laws, regulatory entities, there's lots of different policies, there's got lots of different structures, lots of data, structured and unstructured, transaction records to the communications. And we need to really be able to visualize these relationships, because it's hard to understand it in any other way, right? You have to be able to visualize this stuff, and you need to be able to allow a system to flag transactions and to flag non-compliance automatically, right? And we need to increase that diligence while reducing the staff burden. And again, here's a little map of concepts. We have a bank, we have a customer, there's regulatory compliance, such as anti-money laundering. That means they need to know their customer. It means there are rules that have to be applied. Customers have to be put into a risk category based on their activities that need to be monitored, that need to be reported. And then there's certain thresholds that get the attention of the correct agency that has jurisdiction based on that account data, right? Where they are, what they do, and so on. And then we can start to monitor their status, right? Now, that's just one piece of it. There's tons of other things, and there's lots of relationships. But what does this look like? A graph, right? These are concepts, but it's a graph. It's a graph data representation. And doing this at scale is the only way you can do this is with graph data. So again, when we want to get started, we want to understand those outcomes. What are business objectives? What's important to stakeholder? What are those supporting processes? What's the data that drives those processes? What is needed to support the business? What's the quality and completeness? That's just defining those baseline measures. And then again, we want to try to understand, well, what outcome are they looking for? What are the decision-making bodies that are already in existence? As Juan said, you're doing a lot of this stuff. Who's the sponsor? Who cares about this? How are we going to communicate this? How are we going to plan change? So I know we did this very, very quickly, and we're kind of at the end of our session, but there is one or two other questions we could. So people are saying, I love the focus on being business driven. We need to say, where do we need to invest our funds, right? That's a very valuable, this is how we do this. Let's see. How do we get started with a smaller domain of use for knowledge, such as customer service? Perfect question. And I think you simply start by documenting those processes and looking at the elements, and you start with your customer at the end, at the central point. And then you can start to build that customer data model, that attribute model, and you can start to understand what content is relevant. I actually have a workshop on building knowledge graphs that actually uses customer service as an example. Maybe we could walk through that with you guys. Let's see, develop effective linkages between the levels of activity and analytics. How should we think about designing these linkages? That's a great question. We probably have to have a conversation. I don't think we can answer it in the 30 seconds that we have left, but you're asking the right questions, John. And then there's a question about, is it hard to build a natural language interface for Sparkle endpoint? That's a technical question. Juan, I don't know if you want to answer it very quickly.
I'll happy to take this offline, but I think
let's take this offline.
Questions to answer here.
Yeah, this has been great. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know we had a lot of stuff here. Don't forget our podcast. Don't forget Juan's podcast. And if you want to reach out, early.com, Seth@early.com, Juan@data.world. And let's schedule time, guys. We are happy to talk shop, happy to help you get started. So give us a shout and let's catch up, and we'll take the other questions offline. So thank you, Juan. Again, thank you.
Seth.
Sharon in spirit. Actually, Sharon's retired. I told people that. This is Carolyn impersonating Sharon. But thanks again, and we will talk to you next time.